Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Martimus from the Feisty Lawyers series, Book 5 by Seelie K, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1, Missing. Kate Creighton yanked at her gold form-fitting dress and muttered, "You'd think a $5,000 dress would cover a bit more skin." She stepped into the ballroom, and her gaze swept the crowd of 20-something socialites. Around the ballroom, easels bearing photographs of buildings and people were artfully arranged, but mostly ignored. Attending these gay soirees with her two wealthy brethren was de rigueur, expected of people in her social strata, but it annoyed her that most were there to party. They didn't give two shits about the cause. This particular gathering benefited a homeless veterans program, one she and her work colleagues actively supported. Sure, a lot of money would be raised this evening, but she doubted any of these people would ever engage a homeless veteran in conversation, much less extend an actual helping hand. Throwing money at a problem seemed to be their solution for everything. Kate sighed. Sometimes the people of her social class sucked. She had grown up wealthy. She had never really associated with anyone outside the moneyed class until her mother, Lydia, was named the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Then she accompanied her mother on trips to the third world countries ravaged by war and nations steeped in poverty. Kate's eyes had been opened wide. She now understood that she had an obligation to use her wealth for good, to pay it forward. Unfortunately, that was not a commitment shared by many of the people in the present room. Kate could not imagine living a life without purpose. That was why she had joined the agency. She gazed around the room, looking for other members of her agency team. Hope Allie waved from across the room, then laughed at something another guest said. Her much taller husband, Tom Jeffries, stood at her side and appeared bemused at their conversation taking place. Their team leader, Anders Mark, and his wife, Diana Murphy, sat off to the side, apparently engaged in conversation. In reality, Kate knew they were actively scanning the room, studying each and every attendee. Near the buffet table, a tall man with platinum blonde hair turned, and his steel blue eyes grew wide. Warren Hazelton, Hope's official bodyguard and a new member of their team, grinned, then boldly winked. Kate ignored him. Warren made her heart race and her panties wet, but tonight she was on the job. She had no time for his flirtations and dirty talk. She was supposed to be collecting information. Kate approached the bar set up in a corner. When the middle-aged bartender cast her an admiring gaze, she purred, "A dirty martini, please. Extra dirty." The bartender blushed and quickly prepared her drink. When he set down the extra-large martini glass in front of her, he said, "Pardon me for saying so, but you'd give Marilyn Monroe a run for her money. Those big blue eyes, luscious red lips, divine blonde hair, and that dress has every man in the room drooling." Kate tittered. She picked up the swizzle stick that pierced a big green olive and popped the fruit into her mouth. "Well then," she cooed, "you'd better make sure you have lots of clean towels." She giggled at the bartender's expression of surprise, picked up her glass, and sauntered away. She had turned playing a bimbo into an art. Flash a little skin, flirt without restraint, play dumb when politics was discussed, and most importantly, make them believe that with just a little bit of effort, they could convince her to wiggle out of her teeny-tiny dress and display her charms. A young man dressed in a flashy red and black jacquard tuxedo stepped in front of her. His gaze moved from her face to her barely covered breasts, to her long tanned legs, and back to her face. The man's thin-lipped mouth curled up into a lecherous grin, and his narrow green eyes flashed with lust. "Why, Kate, you do clean up nice." Kate took a sip of her martini and studied the pasty-faced man over the rim of her glass. "Why, thank you, Charles." She paused. "Tell me, how is Jackie? What is she, about 4 months along now?" Charles Wright shrugged. "I guess. I haven't seen her in a while. We're sort of taking a break." Kate studied him. His flat brown hair framed a lackluster face. His eyes were a bit too close together, his nose unattractively broad. Not someone she would enjoy waking up next to every morning, though Jackie was no beauty either. Kate tapped his arm with her blood-red nails. "Take my advice, Charles. Marry that girl before she takes off with your child, then demands your liver in exchange for visitation rights." Kate cocked an eyebrow. "By the way, have you seen Elise Ellis? I was supposed to meet her here, and I can't find her anywhere." Charles cast Kate a speculative glance. I was not aware you were even acquainted. His eyes narrowed. And why would you be asking me about Elise anyway? Have you heard something about us? Oh, God, please tell me there are not any rumors going around about us. They simply are not true. If Jackie hears about this... Kate tried not to chuckle. Charles seemed quite panicked. Obviously he and Elise had been up to something. Charles had a reputation for loving and leaving him, which was why, when she learned of the pregnancy, Jackie had quickly fastened a legal noose around his neck. Poor Charles was still struggling to breathe. If Jackie learned of any outside dalliances, she was sure to tighten that noose ever more firmly. Jackie expected Charles to marry her. Period. Charles had already signed a support agreement that would permit Jackie to live like royalty for the rest of her life, but she was holding out on custody and visitation rights until Charles put a ring on her finger. Good heavens, Jackie was already 4 months along. If they waited much longer to marry, no one would believe that the child had arrived prematurely. Kate tittered and patted Charles on the arm. No need to panic, darling. I've heard nothing. I was merely inquiring about Elise because we were supposed to meet up. Kate had no such plans. She simply wanted to know where Elise was. She turned and moved to a group of young men gathered in the corner. The rowdy discussion stopped as she approached. Why, Cookie, one man drawled. You are a sight for sore eyes. Where have you been hiding those spectacular tits? Kate fought the desire to slug the obnoxious cur. Cookie was a childhood nickname, and she had hated it. In a flirtatious tone, she replied, Archie, I'm surprised you even noticed. Her expression turned sly. Word is that you are head over heels for Elena Bosworth. Should I expect a wedding invitation? Archie groaned. Jesus, show a little affection for a chit and the old ball and chain gets hauled out of the closet. I am too young for a life sentence. His friends nodded. He continued. Besides, word is that she has set her sights on old Fuzzy Winston. He placed a finger on the side of his nose and sniffed. Apparently he keeps her quite happy. Kate arched an eyebrow. Where is the Fuzz, anyway? I haven't seen him in weeks. He rarely misses a party. Archie shrugged. Who knows? Maybe Elena has him hog-tied to her bed. She did display some unattractive dominant traits. He shuddered. My future wife will know who wields the whip, and it won't be her. The other men murmured their assent. Kate rolled her eyes. Sometimes it was difficult to be polite to Archie. He wore his chauvinism on his sleeve, and his lack of concern for a man he called a friend was troubling. Fuzzy Winston had been missing for several months. Archie wasn't even a little concerned. Strong arms circled Kate's waist, and moist lips nuzzled her neck. Let's both blow this pop stand and have some real fun, babe, crooned a mellow baritone. A hand removed the drink from her hand and placed it on the tray of a passing waiter. Dance with me. Kate turned and stared up into Warren Hazelton's ice-blue eyes. She gave him a sweet smile. I thought you'd never ask. The tall, solidly built former U.S. Navy SEAL pulled her onto the dance floor and swept her into a waltz. He held her body tightly against his. Through her thick, fake eyelashes, Kate peered up at him. Aren't you supposed to be guarding Hope? I convinced Sibley to trade places. He's watching Hope while I'm watching you. No offense to the pipsqueak, but I'd much rather be watching you. He grinned. Besides, there are so many bodyguards in this room that if anyone made a move on the sweet princess, they'd be riddled with bullets before they could pull a weapon. And as Hope pointed out, my presence intimidates. She said she can't do her job with me hulking around. So I'm giving her a little space. He chuckled. Since Hope was kidnapped right out from her husband's nose, Tom's been more vigilant, too. Trust me, she's well protected. Kate smiled. Well, perhaps she'll have better luck than me. The only rumors I could catch are that Charles Wright carries defective condoms and may have dallied with Elise Ellis in the past, and Fuzzy Winston may have been compromised by the lovely Elena Bosworth. No one seems at all concerned that he has not been seen for almost 3 months. She reached up and stroked his short platinum hair, affection overwhelming her heart. God, this man made her positively giddy. We are not dealing with the brightest bulbs in the chandelier here, but you'd think they would be questioning the absence of their friends. You know how this group is. Friendship is fickle. 1 week they're your bestie, the next they've never heard of you. Warren pulled away from Kate, and his gaze swept her body. By the way, this dress would force even the most proper gentleman to indulge in a little ungentlemanly behavior. Really, Kate, it's more skin than fabric. You don't leave much to the imagination. He brushed his hand across her bare back. I would reveal my deepest, darkest secrets for a peek under this thing. It's worse than running a Boink Me ad during the Super Bowl. He pulled her closer to him, trailing kisses from her ear to her neck. No subtlety at all. Warren, darling, trying to mark your territory? His hand slid down her half-naked body and rested just above the curve of her ass. Warren kissed her lightly. Most definitely. Kate frowned. This thing with Warren was getting a little confusing. Sure, members of the agency tended to couple up. When you worked in covert operations, it was just easier. However, Kate was a honeypot. The agent assigned to romance, dazzle, and sometimes seduce persons of interest. She used sex to wring the truth from informants, suspects, traitors, and outright villains. It was her job to appear footloose and fancy-free, not enamored with a gorgeous hunk of man-flesh. Down, boy, she whispered. We're working tonight. Save the romance for our bedroom. Her team had been assigned to find a group of young socialites who had gone off the grid. All of the missing were linked to prominent politicians or government leaders, making them high-value targets. They could have been taken for ransom to force their parents into providing unsavory political favors or other questionable purposes. Because no one had been able to find them, their disappearance remained a mystery. And because her fellow socialites showed so little interest, no one seemed compelled to launch a search. It wasn't until a former vice president's daughter went AWOL that the agency had been called in. The agency's mission was twofold. First, they were to determine how many highly connected socialites were missing. The best way to do that was to mingle and focus in on the rumor mill. This circle fed on gossip. If there was a rumor to be had, they knew about it. Second, every member of the team had similar familiar connections. Their parents all served in positions of influence and power. Conceivably, they were targets as well. If they brought enough attention to themselves, perhaps they could attract the interest of those who had a hand in the disappearances. At the moment, all they had was a lot of speculation and very few facts. They didn't even know if the disappearances were related. Kate gazed at Warren. It's hard enough to get these people to talk. Hope's right, you're intimidating. I can't have you hanging around acting like you're going to go all caveman on anyone who looks twice at me. You need to chill out and fade into the background. Warren scoffed. None of these people can see past that scandalous dress you're wearing. Besides, given your reputation, I'm just going to be seen as another one of your conquests. He cocked an eyebrow. Hopefully, not the one with the leaky condoms. Kate giggled. Warren, darling, I think you just called me a slut. Warren chuckled. No, I'm merely complimenting your skills as an actress. I know you're not promiscuous. Heck, it took 3 months to get you into my bed, and I put in maximum effort. If you want to behave like a slut in our bedroom, you won't find me complaining. Kate slapped him and giggled. You are a dirty old man, Warren Hazelton. She blew him a kiss and then said sweetly, Later, sailor. Then she walked away, putting an extra swing in her step, just for Warren's benefit.